we're in a real fix right now. And the humanity has not been sustainable since the minute that we discovered fire. So we discovered fire, and suddenly our jaws got thinner and our guts got shorter. And so suddenly at that point, we don't have the capacity to eat the things that we ate before. So we have to continue extracting in a way that makes it possible for us to keep living. So the question now is just, how do we go about our daily life and extract in a way that we can put as much back in while we're extracting?
Hey, Hobbs, how are you?
I'm great. How are you, Jesse?
Good. Very nice to meet you on the virtually.
Nice to meet you virtually as well.
I mean, were your parents into farming, or was it really the main influence your grandfather?
Main influence was my granddad. To some degree, my parents were. We had a couple of 100 acres, and we ran some cows on it. So just nothing nearly as intensely as my granddad did. But it was kind of that inflection point when the agricultural economy was really beginning to transition into a digital and technical and service-based economy. So there's a lot more opportunities outside of agriculture. And so that was the point where my mom and dad were, had the capacity to make a lot more money doing something other than ranching. And, and now I think it's flipping again, where people are seeing the value of ranching and farming done correctly.
Did your grandfather understand did he recognize your passion for growing things?
No, not really. I mean, I don't think that I had even really cultivated it all that much when I was a younger man. And it didn't really kick in until I was basically, probably his death galvanized it quite a lot. But I spent a lot of time with him, learned all of the things, and basically learned how to do the traditional style of ranching that he did, which was a fabulous foundation.
It was more than the way it seems to me it was more than just the moving the cows around. He taught you a set of values and an idea about the world and about being in balance with nature. Did that all come from him?
Yeah, there's an ethos that I think a lot of Americans don't understand, that ranchers are a different ethnicity than most people. It's an interesting combination of Spanish, Mexican, indigenous, and white that's mishmashed into this culture that's, as far as I can tell, sort of the closest thing to a North American version of Zen that I've been able to put my finger on. And so, yeah, I remember distinctly being in probably 4 or 5 years old in the front seat of his pickup, pulled out, looking out across a pasture, and he said, I could be at church right now, but this is heaven right here. So I think that could possibly sum up what you're getting at.
You kind of took what he, kind of gave to you, but you really innovated. You brought it forward in a different way, right? Like didn't you bring new ideas into what you're doing now?
Well, I would characterize myself as somewhat of an assimilator, because I don't really do anything that's particularly new. There are a lot of great people out there, the Alan Savorys, Johan Zietzman, Greg Judy, Joel Salatin, who have done this, Jaime Elizondo, who have taken ranching, and now that we have basically this space age technology of electric fences and polywires, and we've been able to drill down on the management and change ranching from a hunter-gatherer practice to a high degree of management.
Did you so the sort of climate issues, did you learn those sort of more futuristic, I would say even non-ranchery things at Oregon University? Is that where that came from?
It did galvanize somewhat at that time. However, I was, my parents were very progressive, living in the Texas Panhandle. My mother was a yoga teacher. My dad had spent a lot of time in the Pacific Northwest. And so I definitely remember being in middle school lamenting at the very few people getting into the massive SUVs being picked up at school, as a young kid. So I think the sense that human beings had the capacity to affect our environment much more greatly than most people had an idea about was beginning to precipitate at a young age.
What's coming now? You know, when you look at COVID and you look at a lot of the things that are changing in our world, how's that going to affect farming?
Oh, well, that is a great question. So what's coming now, it seems to me, is an interesting confluence of geopolitical, energy input, social and financial, and also military dominance issues that are going to come together to create that's going to come and completely knock out the foundation that we've built our agriculture system on, right? So our entire agriculture system is built on fossil fuels. It has been since World War II. You know, they had to find something to do with all the TNT factories that they were trying to idle down after we won World War II, right? So then they discovered they could use that in fertilizer, and then the government began subsidizing anhydrous ammonium fertilizer and paying the farmers to put it on their fields. So basically we got all addicted immediately to fossil fuel fertilizers. And so now we're basically like a fish in water. We can't even recognize how much of our entire reality is built on fossil fuels right now. And so the post-World War II world order was built on American dominance of shipping lanes, the ability for the entire world to use the United States dollar to trade in oil as a result of the petrodollar in like 1971. And then you have that basically creating this artificial environment where the United States has a massive set of advantages that we can take a disproportionate amount of the world's resources and use it to build our agricultural systems. And so in the next 10 years, I mean, China is basically challenging us militaristically and also financially. I mean, they have our basic ability to control the world has been built historically on our ability to control shipping lanes and our ability to control the world with the U.S. Navy. Now, both Russia and China have hypersonic missile technology that makes our ability to control the shipping lanes much less secure. And so it's all of these massive advantages that have stacked up to create, you know, this extremely complex level of agricultural abstraction that we're existing on in this country are about to get knocked out from underneath us in the next 10 years. And so we're going to have to we have to transition from using stored ancient sunlight in the form of easily accessible fossil fuels to transition as much of that as we can to using the sunlight that it falls on the earth as it does. And that's going to be an extremely painful transition.
You know, for some folks that are just, you know, listening, and can you just also explain kind of the way that you work? I mean, we've been watching you and all of that. Jesse found you, and we've been studying what you do, but a lot of folks won't know. And just explain the ecosystem, you know, what you're doing with the cows, sort of a little quick nugget of that, so that people can plug into what you're talking about right now.
Absolutely. So basically, what I do is I don't view cattle as a beef product. I view cattle as an eco necessity, as a carbon cycler. So cattle have a rumen. It's their first stomach, you might say, and it's designed to hold microbes that break down carbon or break down cellulose. And so they are a vital piece of the carbon cycle and the nutrient cycle that we have completely forgotten about. And they were evolved in that system as migratory creatures, which meant that they would graze in these herds, these dense herds, and then move away. And then let the ground recover. And then when they work their way back through that migratory system, they would hit it again. And in the meantime, while it was resting, all of these amazing processes would happen and heal the ground and put carbon in the soil and promote the organic matter. And so basically what happened is over the last 200 years, we wiped out all of our megafauna. That's the megafauna wipeout goes back to about 12 to 14,000 years. But in the last couple hundred years, we've really we've wiped out all of the fauna, and we've replaced this migratory carbon cycling scheme with this stationary scheme where the ecosystem is getting hit constantly with cattle. And so the ecosystem does not have the technology to absorb it because it did not evolve in that capacity. So what we've done is we've tried to reinstitute that migratory scheme using electric fences on our properties. So now that the world is basically dominated by humans and the techno-industrial paradigm, we have to find a way to create insert nature's patterns on top of that, because if we don't, our entire environment is going to collapse.
Wow.
So,
Wow.
so you're down here in Los Angeles. You're a musician. You have a child, and you turn to your wife and you say, "Hey, it's time for us to go. Get out of here." Or what do you think of that? I mean, what's that conversation like? And does she go, "Great, let's go," or does she, how does she respond when you first say you want to follow this new path?
Well, it's almost as if the path picked us in a way. We were here in Central Oregon and doing music. She was working as a Facebook ads manager with her own business. I was running my own composition business. It was doing pretty well. And then suddenly, in this sort of archetypal flame, my business slowed down. Her business slowed down. The place we were living suddenly became unavailable. And then we found out we were pregnant. So all of these things collided at once. And so we had to make a move, or else we were going to sink in the mud. So we went down to Los Angeles. She got a job at a company called Mute 6. She's been working there for the last 3 or 4 years. She got that job while she was 6 months pregnant. And I was basically a stay-at-home dad while I was reading everything that I could possibly on this sort of new way of doing agriculture and how I get integrated into my heritage. And then suddenly it just sort of dawned on us that, I had all of these networks in Central Oregon. This is what I was going to do. Now that I've learned about this, it's kind of one of those, it's my responsibility to go and do this. This is my problem now. And it just sort of culminated into the realization that we have to go back to Central Oregon. And the conversation was actually rather easy.
Did you buy the land, or how did you pick the place where you are now?
Well, that was a big leap of faith. I'm actually, I don't own any land. I lease land.
Mm-hmm.
And when we came back up to Central Oregon, it was a big leap of faith simply because we had what we had guaranteed was 7 acres of dry lot and a little bit of startup money. So the rest was on me. So basically, go ahead.
So you get there now. You start with 11 cows, right?
Yeah, that's correct. We started, and it's like they say, it's like, what's the best way to start something? You just start, you just do it. And then you see how it unfolds in front of you. And then, there was a hay field down the road from my parents' house that nobody had used in a long time. And so I was finally able to track down the owner, who actually has similar agricultural beliefs to me. And he had turned down 2 or 3 people who'd wanted to graze that because they weren't going to do it in a regenerative fashion. And when I said, he's like, "Well, there's a special way you have to graze it." And I was like, "Well, turns out that's exactly what I wanted to do." So, that was serendipitous. And then from then on, people we very conspicuously began grazing in a very unorthodox manner, and it got people's attention, and then they would contact me. And then, so I ended up on the end of this meadow that has been sitting for 20 years with nobody doing anything with it, because it's been split into 9 or 10 different landowners, and no one has organized these landowners together. And over the past couple of years, we've just kind of worked our way down the meadow, and now that's I don't know, probably 100 acres of sub-irrigated meadow that is beautiful, and has just become overrun by undesirable species because it's been left to its own devices in an urban area without the natural ruminants going across it, as we previously discussed. So yeah, it's like it was a leap of faith.
Do you think that it's also serendipitous that you are at a certain part of the country that would be open to this? I mean, if you were in other parts of the country, do you think that we're going to be, in Texas, for example, a lot of oil, a lot of the things that we talked about earlier? Is there something about an outlook on life that is allowing for this to sort of scale?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. So in Central Oregon, there's enough of a balance of rural people and forward-thinking urban people with money and no agricultural experience that it is kind of a sweet spot for me to be able to implement this and scale it. And I think that's part of one of the reasons why we realized we want to come back to Sisters, because we took stock of our assets, physical, monetary, intellectual, and otherwise, and said, okay, well, we can put this together and make it work here because of this exact reason. And it's an interesting thing with regard to how the American West is developing, because all of the really great places are subdividing into smaller pieces, because the old way of doing agriculture can no longer pay for the benefit that you can get from property value. So now we have these people who've made their money in Seattle, Portland, LA, San Francisco, and want to retire in a rural area, but don't have any agriculture experience, but also want to be part of something that's really cool and forward thinking and good for the world. And so it's sort of a sweet spot. And if I was in Iowa, no, they would charge me $200 an acre, so that because that's the amount that it takes to basically break even once you've fertilized and grown a monoculture corn crop and harvested and sent it into the big ag system.
How important was it with the first 11 cows? Like, do you have to start with like a clean slate? I mean, were they pure? I mean, how did you go find those?
So I was looking for an animal with a particular body type. And what that means is that if you have a smaller animal, it requires less groceries to keep the lights on, basically. And what we've done over the last 60, 70 years as a result of all these advantages and massive amounts of grain and subsidies is we've grown our cattle larger and larger and larger and larger. And so they do really well when you throw them in a feedlot and shove them full of 70% grain for the last part of their life. They fatten up really nicely. But it took 32 fossil fuel calories of energy to create 1 calorie of grain-fed beef. And so it's like, no, we're not eating all of those calories, but the system is eating them, and we're responsible for putting that system in place. So we have spent 32 calories of energy to get 1 calorie of energy out. And that's just an extremely inefficient way to turn sunlight into protein. And so the appropriate way to turn sunlight into protein, actually, most efficient way, turns out, is the way that we are grazing. And also that if you efficiently turn sunlight into protein and you're doing it correctly in the most efficient manner, you're also healing the ground. And also you're also increasing your organic matter, your ability to hold water. Like we're in a real fix right now. And the humanity has not been sustainable since the minute that we discovered fire. So we discovered fire, and suddenly our jaws got thinner and our guts got shorter. And so suddenly at that point, we don't have the capacity to eat the things that we ate before. So we have to continue extracting in a way that makes it possible for us to keep living. So the question now is just, how do we go about our daily life and extract in a way that we can put as much back in while we're extracting?
So the value, take me through how okay, so the first day when you first get there, what do you see? It's just unusable land and 11 cows and you and you've got to put up a fence. Like, what's the first day like?
Okay, so let's take a piece of, let's start with that hayfield. So first thing I had to do was go around and fix all the fences, the external fences, because you don't want your cattle getting out. And the second thing is you have to design a high density grazing sort of scheme where you're going to have your water lanes and how the grazing lanes are going to go off of that. And so you take a look at what forage is there and you go, okay, well, how much is it going to take for me to feed these cattle in one day? Then you split that into 4 and you move them 4 times a day. And as you do that, the ground gets better, the forage gets thicker and taller, and then you can bunch them up even more. And so it sort of feeds on itself as an improvement, or you can increase your stocking rate. So basically, I have to rebuild from the ground up the way that this entire pasture is laid out. And coincidentally, I mean, as you might imagine, that is the biggest obstacle to ranchers transitioning to a new way of doing this, is the immediate infrastructure changes, as well as the mental shift that needs to occur.
Now, do the owners see that as like you said, well, the owner hadn't leased it to these other people, he wanted to lease it to me because I was going to use this different method. Does he, I'm assuming it's a he, what's the value that he sees? Why does he care that it's regenerative versus just being the same old thing?
Well, that particular guy is an intense permaculture. His name's Jeremy Allen, and he intense permaculture, very high IQ dude who sees, the direction that humanity is going, and so wants to basically create as much fertility on his land as possible. That's number one. Number two, in the state of Oregon, I don't know how it is in California, if you use your land for agricultural purposes, your tax bill is about 1/20th of what it is. So that's one benefit that all of the landowners that I have, they get to keep their tax deferral, because you lose your tax deferral if you're not using it for agricultural purposes. And if you have land that can be used for agriculture and you don't have a tax deferral, after 3 years, you can apply for a tax deferral. So
they knew that before you walked in the door?
A lot of people don't know. So I get the opportunity to educate people, and also people who eat beef, they get some beef out of the deal as well. Because I'm taking these pieces of unimproved ground and improving it, so it's not worth my time to lease it right up front. So oftentimes we do, not necessarily a trade, but I'm happy to, I'll pay a certain amount to lease it. They'll pay a certain amount for me to manage it, so everything's good with the books. And then at that point, basically, everybody's benefiting. So
now, when you get there, are there fence lines? Are there fences between all the different parts of the pasture, or is it just an open pasture?
So sometimes it's open, and you have to build a solid perimeter fence. And most of these places have these solid perimeter fences because these have been agricultural places in the past. So a lot of times they need a lot of work. A lot of times they need one side closed in, which I've done a lot of. But one of the rules of thumb in this type of grazing is if you have a temporary fence in a place for 3 years, then you can make a permanent fence. So basically what I have are completely temporary fences along the inside. And so I have polywire that's on these reels. And so I'll hook them into one side, stretch them across through a bunch of posts that are temporary that I've either hammered in or stepped into the ground. And that way I can, set up all my logistical scheme to graze the cattle.
Now, do you do that by yourself, or do you do it with other people with you?
Mostly by myself.
Well, that's unusual for Jesse. He's trying to figure out how you're actually out there doing that, right?
It's so you start with 11 cows. What do you do? So and now you have 40 cows. So how does that work? How do you build up the amount of cows you have and still, take some and make them into beef?
So that's a great question. So a lot of what we do is there are 3 types of basically having cows that I do. Number 1, the cattle that I own. Number 2, the cattle that I custom manage for other people. Number 3, the cattle that other people buy as yearlings, and then I finish them and feed them, or I feed them out, have them butchered, sell them, and then give the person who bought them a return on their investment. So this year I was able to give everybody basically a 10% return, which where are you going to get that? Outside of Bitcoin,
Right.
I have a question about the beef, the cattle that go to beef, and I'm thinking of Temple Grandin and how she did all those studies of, remember that? You know that, Jesse, right? About
Sure, of course.
The terrible ways in which is there something about this methodology that you're doing that also makes it's
just the life of the cow better than it would be otherwise.
Right. And is it ultimately in the way
Absolutely. So there are 2 things even before the slaughter that happen that create a much more chilled out cow, you might say. Number 1 is the fact that they see me 4 times a day, or at least once a day. And so a human shows up when they're out on big ranches. Typically it's a human on horseback, which is a totally different species as far as they're concerned. And they're terrified because that's a predator. So in that initial period, I go from a predator to a food source for them. And so when they see me and they see stuff being done around them, they don't get stressed out about it. Number 2 is that people don't realize is that cattle out on big pastures spread out are in a state of permanent psychosis because they are not encouraged to herd up. Their entire evolutionary history is built on herds moving around because there are predators on the outside moving them around. So when I force these animals to herd up in these electric fence schemes, after about 2 weeks, you can see them just settle down because I don't know if it's an epigenetic activation or whatever is in there, it just gets turned back on, but that herd instinct reactivates and that level of of intensity and constant alertness, or mild psychosis, actually, as I would put it, just goes down. Then once it gets to the slaughter, we do everything that we can to, and this is a whole can of worms right here, to do the slaughter on farm, because we don't want to put our animals in a trailer and take them to a place that has all of these crazy smells, sights, and then animals they don't know, be thrown into a pen with surrounded by animals and people they don't know, and then killed on a bloodstained floor surrounded by people they don't know in a terrifying situation. So like that's what you're eating in the vast majority of cases. And unfortunately, if I want to sell a cut of beef, I have to take it to a slaughterhouse that does that. I can only sell quarters, halves, and wholes basically when they're killed on farm, because that's called a custom exempt slaughter, because it's not inspected by the USDA. And then you have to own a piece of the animal before, because a custom exempt slaughter, you can only eat your own animal. So it's technically theirs because I've sold it in quarters beforehand. It's slaughtered. Then once it's been turned into a carcass, then it's taken to the butcher shop and changed. So when they're killed on farm, they don't see what's coming at all. So they're relaxed. Everything's good. Then they call it knocking them down. So then they knock them down, then they turn them into a carcass, and then there you go. As opposed to taking them to a slaughterhouse, which is the small slaughterhouses are much better than the big slaughterhouses, and you can't even, that's why you can't even get in the big slaughterhouses to see what's going on in there. And so, I mean, that's, and not even to get into the massive transportation network that is necessary for that whole thing to happen. If all of my animals could never even leave my zip code, I would be happy. And if that method would scale, worldwide, that would be the best thing for us.
Are you looking, so why TikTok? How does the technical thing, I mean, that seems, I don't know, not contrarian, but it seems like that's a totally technical thing that you're doing, but how does that come about?
With TikTok?
Yeah. Like why join TikTok, and why make these, I love them. I watched all of them, but like how I just stumbled on it. Like what was your motivation to do that originally?
Well, a lot of it is because my wife is tired of me talking about it to her all the time. That was a big reason. And then, we live in an interesting time in human history where I think the opportunity to be extremely digitally connected as well as environmentally connected are not necessarily opposing forces. Right. And I think it's really, I mean, my wife works completely in the digital realm, and I work almost completely in the analog realm. And I think those are complementary. And TikTok is amazing because it forces, number one, you have to provide value or the algorithm doesn't give you anywhere. And number two, you have to, especially if you're doing something that requires as many words as what I throw around, you have to condense your thoughts into something that is digestible and makes sense in under 59 seconds. So I never really did big on social media before that. Once I learned that a lot of the composers in LA had completely made their career on Facebook, I was like, I'm out. Mm-hmm. But for some reason, I just tried TikTok and it caught. And, I'm almost at 100,000 followers right now, which is not like a mega influencer, but it's quite a good following, especially for a guy who's just talking about grass all the time, and not just grass. But.
Have you been surprised by the response?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I've been surprised by the response in a sense that I didn't expect it, but once I started to think about it, it kind of makes sense because TikTok is, especially in the beginning, was younger people who have a little bit more of an open mind to it. Particularly the last month, I think TikTok has really spread into the more the flyover country where they're typically a little bit behind the trends anyway. And so the uptick in the ratio of positive comments to negative comments has begun to balance out a lot. So I get a lot of hate from the conventional ranchers and the conventional grain farmers. And so it's interesting. Like, I've been insulted more in the last probably month than most people will get in their entire lives. No, so it's been interesting to absorb that.
You're making good trouble there.
Conceptually, what is the issue?
The issue is conceptually, nobody likes their personal mythology attacked or even implied that the way that people have lived or organized their life is um, is missing something or is going about it the wrong way. And you have a lot of heritage tied into that, and also you have people's bank accounts tied into that. And there's nobody wants their gig to be under attack.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
nobody wants that. And you know, for me to say, and you know, typically most agrarians, and I'll probably get in trouble for saying this, are not really farmers. They're technicians. They follow instructions. You know, as most people probably are. You know, most people are not thinkers. You know, there's a very small percentage of people who have the capacity to take disparate subjects, put them together, and come out with something that's kind of new or has a new take on something. And so when I make a video about the problem of grain subsidies, people think that I'm saying all grain is bad and all grain farmers are bad people. You know, and when it's obviously much more nuanced than that. And, you know, I guess that is one of the downsides of only a 59-second video. You know, it's simply that I can't shove everything plus a disclaimer that I don't hate grain farmers. I just know how things are kind of headed. You know, I can't shove all that into a 59-second window. And they're not going to go back and watch all of my videos to have a more appropriate mosaic of my beliefs. So
I have a question for you. Do you find that, I mean, first of all, you might need to be writing a book or something, you know, maybe there's another way to do this, but, or a film about you, but, you know, do you feel connected to, let's say, the climate change, you know, all of the sort of, do you feel other parts of climate crisis movement coming in? Like, where are the allegiances beyond agricultural farming and all the work that you're doing? Do you find that other people are coming to you from that 100,000 and hopefully more? Who are the people that are drawn?
The people who are most interested in this, as far as I can tell, are people who are getting started in agriculture who don't have any tie to the heritage, and urban professionals who live in the city, love their jobs, but still want to contribute to something that is taking direct action to improve the environment. It's really interesting middle ground, because I have a lot of people on the far left, the vegan environmentalists, who think that I'm a total right winger, and then obviously the conventional flyover state type people think that I'm a total socialist. So there, you know, I'm in this interesting place where both sides have the ability to pinpoint me on the other side and identify me as an enemy, but I think that means we're onto something. And as far as the audience, I really think the young urban professionals, the people who care about climate change, as you were alluding to, that's a big part of it. Because I mean, as I said from the beginning, the big shift is that people look at a cow and they see beef. They see something that humans can eat, and that is just the farthest from the truth that it could possibly be. Like that is Mother Nature's way of making carbon in basically grass form available for future forms of life. It's a super important part of the carbon cycle, and we're only just now beginning to understand that.
Amazing.
Are there opportunities for if I grow corn to be, you know, rooted in regenerative agriculture?
Absolutely. So there's a really smart guy out there named Gabe Brown. He has a book called Dirt to Soil, and he basically accidentally stumbled on how to polycrop and perennial and pasture crop because of 4 bad years. And what he does is he'll plant small grains on top of his perennial pastures, so he doesn't till it up. There's nothing wrong with grain per se, but when you till it up every year and you destroy all of the organization in your soil, and then you lay down a ton of fertilizer and pesticides and herbicides that's all washing into the Mississippi River and creating a dead zone in the Gulf of Mexico, like that's a real problem. And when you till up all of that soil, it washes it off. All of the massive floods that happened like 2 years ago in the Midwest, that was because the soil can't grab onto the water anymore. The soil is a sponge, and if it's full of organic matter, it grabs that water. And if it doesn't have the capacity to grab the water, it runs off and creates massive floods downstream. So if you were going to grow corn, I would say absolutely you could do it in a regenerative way. You just have to, number one, polycrop. you got to do it on top of a perennial pasture, because people think, oh, I don't want to have anything else growing because it'll compete with the corn. But that's, that's just sort of a reductionist mindset. When if your perennial pasture is being managed correctly and putting organic matter in the soil, there's plenty for the corn if it's planted. And then you have to integrate livestock to keep all of that perennial pasture and whatever's left over from your corn cycling. So there are 90 million acres there are 90 million acres dedicated specifically to corn in this country that goes to feed livestock, and all of it gets tilled up every year. So what if people put in perennial pastures, improve the soil of their health, improve the health of their soil, and then started polycropping on top of it? Obviously, there would be some problems in transitioning from those two, from an extractive tilling standpoint to a regenerative no-till paradigm. Obviously, there would be some problems in that transition, but if we can build an atom bomb in 3 years in secret, I think we'd be able to figure it out.
It's amazing what you're talking about, because really it's sort of, in a way, you started talking about China and Russia and all the kind of different superpowers and things that are happening, but the power of what you're talking about, just staying right in place and unleashing and unearthing what the power of what is, if you just stay in the same place, I think is something very, very unusual and powerful to think about. And I would say challenge people on the left and on the right to see the kind of the future thinking of what you're talking about, because there's a lot for I think all sides to take in.
You have 40 cows now. You're on your way to 10,000. What are the steps that have to occur to bring you to that?
There are three things that need to happen. Number one, we need to recognize the value of grazing our national forests, particularly in the periphery of urban areas or suburban areas. And I'm not talking about just grazing and turning the cattle out the way that it's currently done. There are Forest Service leases, and people do graze the forest, but they're just turned out for 3 months and then they're gathered back up. That's not herd effect. That's extractive grazing. So we need to find a way to, number one, institute herd effect in our national forests.
What's herd effect?
Herd effect is grouping the cattle up, particularly with electric fences. Sometimes you can use shepherds, but that's not really financially feasible in this country at this time. It's grouping the cattle up and moving them through that migratory pattern across the landscape and letting what was just grazed rest.
And in a national forest, that's powerful because it brings the animals back to that ecosystem. Yeah.
Exactly right. And it also
Tell me about that.
So one of the things that people say a lot is we need more natural ruminants. We need more elk. We need more deer. It's like, okay, well, how do you do that? You need to improve the forage. Well, how do you improve the forage? You got to get herd effect in the national forest to start moving the cycles, the nutrient cycles, the carbon cycles, start disturbing the soil in a way that allows seeds to get worked into the soil instead of just sitting on top. Like you plant a garden, you don't just go throw a bunch of seeds on the top and expect it to grow. You work it into the soil. That's what herds do. Like that's why our grass density is constantly getting wider and wider, because there are no herds to work these seeds into the soil or to drop their fertilizer on it. So we need to improve the forage. So we put the herd effect in the forest, and we have programs, we have people to move these animals, even if it's just on the periphery of towns. And then suddenly all of that 95% of the area that's grazed is resting all the time, and so that's plenty of forage for the natural animals to come down, eat there, be in healthier condition, which means they'll be more fertile, they're more likely to survive and to proliferate more. So the only way we're ever going to get more natural ruminants is if we get herd effect in the forest in an effective way. Right now, in the spread out way, they're competing with the natural ruminants. But if we get a herd effect paradigm going, then they'll be able to contribute to the overall proliferation of biodiversity.
So that's step one. What are steps 2 and 3?
Step 2 is that we need to decentralize ranching, basically. Instead of, so like think about it like a franchise. So if like Sisters Cattle Company had a set of ways of doing things, there's a guy with 50 acres in Terrebonne and somebody with 50 acres in Lapine and 100 acres down in Klamath Falls and up in central Washington, and they wanted to institute it, then maybe we have some sort of franchise situation where we have a decentralized ranch. that would be the second step to getting 10,000 cows, because
So is that on you know, how do a decentralized organization, what is that?
Is that like share economy? Is it like the share economy or no?
I mean,
or, you know,
I guess you'd have to define share economy, but basically what that means is that I've had people contacting me saying, hey, we want to do what you do on your land. Will you come and help us get this set up? And it's like, sure, I would be happy to do that. And so you could either like consult or be under the brand or whatever. And, you know, we have a very specific type of animal that we want to run to make this successful. So there are a lot of sort of proprietary aspects to what we do that might make that feasible. But I think the biggest step is national forest grazing transition, and to make that. And once
step 3, you didn't tell us step 3.
Right. Step 3, huge amounts of venture capital.
Okay. Well, that's it's a wonderful thing that you're doing. Do you you know, you think your grandfather would recognize this farm?
That's a great question. I think he would have a lot of great input and stuff that I never was able to get from him. And I think that he would probably challenge me in amazingly good ways. And I have some mentors that are more traditional ranchers, one in particular, and he always challenges me in amazingly good ways. And through that negotiated discussion, we come up with ways to bridge the idealism of what we're doing and the reality of the current situation. And obviously, compromise is the only way that, you know, you're going to be able to navigate the system as it currently is towards a more idealistic outcome. So I think would he recognize it? You know, he would say, wow, that's very different. I don't even use a horse. He was one of the greatest horsemen that I've ever met, you know, and he taught me basically how to ride and saddle a horse. And so there's the question now is, how do we marry the heritage and the new? How do we, I mean, as you might say, unite the father and son in a way? How do you, it was like Pinocchio, right? You rescue your father from the depths of the whale, and then through that you become a real boy. You know, it's archetypal. So it's so I think that he would appreciate it. I think he would have some great input, and I think that he would be glad, even though he told me when I was a young man there's no retirement in ranching. You know, I didn't understand at the time that what he really meant was once you start doing it, then you'll never be able to do anything else.
Yeah, well, lovely. You know, thank you for the work that you're doing. I think it's spectacular, and we're huge fans. So, you know, thank you for talking to us. You know,
Thank you so much for having me on. It was wonderful to meet both of you.